Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today we are doing the VCT Americas post-kickoff power rankings. So the kickoff tournament did conclude last weekend, so now I'm going to be updating the power rankings that I did during the preseason, so about a week before that kickoff tournament got started. And we're going to be talking about where I see these teams at this current moment. Keeping in mind, a lot of these teams did not play each other because of how the tournament was set up with its group stages and whatnot, so I do expect there to be more movement during the regular season split. So this one did have a ton of movement, but there is some drastic movement in comparison to that preseason ranking I did. We're going to be going from bottom to top, so starting off the list in very last place, moving down 2 spots, was Furia. So I previously had Furia at that number 9 spot. I put them above Evil Geniuses and MIBR. Thought on paper that they're probably better than those two teams. You know, they have MW Zera, they have Havoc. Maybe they can do something interesting. Maybe Havoc can have a good rookie season. So far, that has not turned out that way. Havoc did look pretty rough. And MW Zera, you know, he's definitely still good, but it looks like he's still the only real super talented player on that team, unfortunately. And now that they've lost to MIBR, who definitely have moved up quite a bit, we'll get to them later, but I do see them as, right now, the worst team in the Americas. Moving on to number 10, moving down 2 spots as well, is Cloud9. I really didn't have a lot of faith in Cloud9 going into the VCT season, going into the kickoff tournament. I thought, yeah, they're in the same group as Energy, Furia, and MIBR, so, you know, they're probably better than MIBR and Furia. They ended up just not being very good at all. They did beat MIBR, and then they did lose to them later in the bracket. So Cloud9, I just, you know, now they don't have Whippy anymore, so they're already making roster changes. Cloud9 just loves making roster changes after the first tournament of the year. That seems to be their theme. I didn't really see Whippy as the problem with that roster. I didn't think he was very good for them, but I also thought, you know, maybe they could have, you know, made a different change. I don't know if bringing Vanity in as IGL again was the answer to their problems last year. Not that he's bad or anything, but overall, I just don't see Cloud9 as a very talented team. They have Oxy, who's really good, but he's still a rookie. He's still going to need some time in the oven to really develop his game and become that elite player that he definitely has the potential to be. So we'll see how it goes for Cloud9, but right now I see them as the second worst team in the Americas right now. Moving on to number 9, moving down 2 spots as well. A lot of 2 movements so far. Crew. So for Crew, it's been a small sample size. They've only faced G2 so far this year, so I felt like moving them down further would be kind of disingenuous. They did take a map off of G2 during that first match against them. They looked like they probably could have won, and then they ended up not being able to close out that third map. They were up 7-5 going into their defense side on Ascent. You have to win those, but they just couldn't. So I definitely think Crew is better than what a lot of people give them credit for. Kesnet still looks insane. MTA so far, he's had a good rookie season. I think there's rumors about roster changes with him. That would be weird. I hope not. That would be just way too quick for a rookie. So we'll see what they end up doing, but I think that they should just give the roster a little bit more time before making any changes. Again, they've only faced G2 so far, who they're not super good either, but they definitely did better than Crew throughout this tournament. So, you know, we'll see what happens with Crew, but I still think there's more to be had. But right now, I can't justify putting them over, you know, teams that are above them. Which brings us to number 8, moving down 3 spots, is unfortunately G2. G2 frustrated me throughout this tournament. I basically am choosing 2 teams to really root for this year in the Americas, and that's Energy and G2. G2 being the Ascension team, I really want them to do well and prove that those players that played in Tier 2 can be dominant at a Tier 1 level. And I think with the Americas, you know, seemingly being pretty wide open, at least at the start of the year, I thought maybe they could do some damage early. That did not happen. It was incredibly frustrating, the losses that they suffered. They lost against Evil Geniuses. They beat Crew twice, which was nice, but they probably could have beaten EG. They lost, I believe it was 2-0, but I think they could have at least taken a map. EG has definitely been surprising some people, but I definitely think that they could have beat them. I think they have better talent overall than EG, but unfortunately, just EG got the better of them, and then during that match against MIBR, like, I know MIBR is good, but you have to win that one. That was a very, very important match. If they won that one, it would have been a just barn burner against Sentinels instead of that annoying one we got where like the second and third map meant nothing because Sentinels just needed that one map to win. If G2 had at least made it competitive by beating MIBR, who I am giving a lot of credit to, I think this team would have been in a much, much better spot. I don't think they would have made Madrid, but I think they definitely have potential there that we're not seeing at this point. I think they need to rethink their comps, they need to rethink their map pool, and hopefully they can come out during the regular season split and do some damage. Moving on to number 7, moving down just one spot is 100 Thieves. So I previously had 100 Thieves at number 6. I thought they're not a top 5 team, but I don't think that they're in like the bottom 3 or 4 or anything. So I felt like number 6 was a pretty good spot to start them with, and unfortunately for them, they could not win a match this tournament, losing against Leviathan and then losing against Sentinels, but I will point out that they made both those matches quite competitive. Taking a map on both of them, very impressive work from them. They just couldn't close it out, and unfortunately both Sentinels and Leviathan ended up having their number. But losing against those two teams that people consider to be very good, who are above them on this power ranking, I thought I shouldn't drop them down too much, and I just had one team pass them. So overall, I don't think 100 Thieves are cooked or anything. I don't think they're a bad team. I think once Boostio really just gets his fingers deep with this roster, he's going to be able to get a lot out of them. There's already been flashes of it. I don't think he had the best tournament overall, but he's still adjusting to this new roster and to that Gecko role. So I'm very curious to see what 100 Thieves end up doing, because I do think that they can do some damage this year. I just really hope that we see it in the later half. Moving on to one of our biggest movers, moving up 4 spots on this power ranking, is Evil Geniuses. EG really impressed me. I didn't expect this roster to do a lot of damage. I knew that with how the format was, that it was in their advantage. So I thought, yeah, they're probably going to end up doing something really funny and end up upsetting G2 or Crew, whichever one makes it to them, and then maybe even do something even funnier and then beating whoever they play in playoffs and then making it to Madrid. That did not happen, and I'm not surprised that didn't happen. I do think that after they won that match against G2, people might have been just a bit too high on this team. I feel like in Valorant Esports, we overrate teams and players quite a bit. I see it all the time, and I do plan on making a video about that actually. And I feel like that kind of happened with EG. I mean, they beat G2, but G2 is a tier 2 team that made it through Ascension that hasn't fully adjusted to tier 1 yet. So beating them, I don't think moves them up a ton. But then they did take a map off of Loud, so you can use that as an argument for them being a top 5 team. I personally don't. Loud does tend to lose a map or two, but then end up rallying back later in the match. But for EG, they did look very good. Potter is still a very good coach, but I still don't know if I see the talent level that they have being able to overcome some of the other big teams. I think they're going to be competitive. I think they're going to be a dangerous team during the regular season. Do I see them winning anything? Not really. So we'll see how it goes for EG, but they are one of our biggest movers this week because they did look quite impressive, but it's still quite a small sample size, so I didn't move them to the top 5. Moving on to number 5, our biggest mover this week, moving up 6 spots from number 10 is MIBR. I think out of all the teams that impressed me during kickoff, MIBR might be number 1 on that list. They didn't end up making playoffs, but they got to play in and they looked really good. They're very well coached. They have some decent players on there. I don't think they're going to, impress anybody to the level of making it to an international event, but it's not totally out of the realm of possibility. They were able to take down Furia pretty handedly, and then they got the revenge on Cloud9 in a pretty convincing fashion. So I was very glad to see this team do well, because having them at number 10 and having just, having those 2 other Brazilian teams at the bottom felt kind of raw, and I feel like hopefully we can see that region really break out during this season, and MIBR looks like they might be able to do it. And hopefully Brazil doesn't continue to be a one good team region with Loud, because MIBR, they look really good. They also have both of the previous Loud coaches, which is pretty funny to me. So yeah, they're really well coached. They got some good players. They got some good wins under the belt at this kickoff tournament. They absolutely looked like very formidable opponents. So in terms of how they did and how much improved they look than what I expected, I did end up putting them in the top 5. Do I expect that to stay that way? I don't know. I feel like teams like EG, G2, and 100 Thieves all have the possibility to pass them. But right now, with how MIBR just stuck out each match and just looked very dangerous, I couldn't justify having EG, 100 Thieves, or G2 above them, because I felt like MIBR, they've looked really impressive so far. They're playing some really good Valorant right now. hopefully in the regular season split they continue it, because it'd be very nice. Moving on to the top 4 teams, starting with number 4, moving down 1 spot from the preseason power rankings is Leviathan. So with Leviathan, I've had my concerns with them for, about a month or two now, ever since they picked up Calm, really, and even since they picked up Tex, to be honest. And their performance at Kickoff didn't exactly quiet down those concerns that I have for them. They have a lot of talent, that is for sure, and that definitely was showcased at this tournament. Aspas obviously still looks great. Tex, Calm, so far. Kane's still looking good. I think that part of the roster is quite good. But overall, I just don't know if this mix of players is really going to gel that well. I think Calm coming in, while Calm is a fantastic player with world championship caliber, I don't know if he was the right move for this team, especially when they still had Noswer. I don't know if I see a world where Calm ends up being that permanent member of that team. Maybe they bring back Noswer. I feel like they'll probably just double down on Calm and just keep him on the roster. But if it doesn't end up working, then you've built this, so-called super team and have it not work, even though you have some very, very talented pieces. And the 2 losses that they suffered were against Loud and Sentinels, but they also kind of look shaky against 100 Themes, a team that they probably should have beaten 2-0. I do think this team is going to bounce back. I didn't punish them too much for their losses because they were in the group of death. Losing against Loud and Sentinels, that's not really something to be too concerned about so far, but I do question how far I see this roster going throughout the year. But I do expect them to do some damage once the regular season splits come in. Moving on to number 3, moving down 1 spot as well, is NRG. So NRG is an interesting conversation. So they have their group where they play against Furia and Cloud9, 2 teams that are at the bottom of this power ranking. They did look quite good in those matches, 2-0ing both of those teams. But then they get to playoffs and then they lose to Sentinels in 2-1 fashion. So it is unfortunate that we're not seeing these players that absolutely could do a lot of damage at an international event not make it. But you gotta win in the format that you're given. So I do expect this team to still be a top 3 team. I think this team absolutely still has potential to be the best team in Americas. They're just not there right now. So I had them at 2nd because they were a newer team. They had a very newly formed roster with only, a couple of reunited players. But they still looked fantastic at times. They still looked like they maybe would have been able to beat Sentinels. Just that last map, I don't want to think about that ever again. But overall, moving them down 1 spot, I thought it was fair, mainly just because team passed them. It's not really punishing them for their loss against Sentinel. So overall, I do expect this team to probably get back into number 1 or number 2 spot. So we'll see how that goes for them. All right, so now we get to our top 2 teams of the Americas. And of course, we have Loud and Sentinels left. So we're going to start with number 2, and it's going to be Loud. So Loud, I thought about keeping at the number 1 spot. They were my top team in the Americas during my preseason power rankings, so they only moved down 1 spot. And I know people were lower on this team because they lost Aspas, but I never saw that as something that's going to make this team not continue to be a top 3 team in the Americas. They still have Les, they still have Sadek, Tui's and Kawazian are great depth pieces there, and Quick has proven to be a formidable player on that team. I still see them as potential contenders to win Madrid. I think they have a very good shot at it, but they did get beat by the team that is above them on this power rankings. So I thought maybe because that grand final did end up being pretty close, Loud being able to nearly get the reverse sweep, maybe I could justify continuing to have Loud at number 1. But then that last map happened, and also how Sentinels won those first 2 maps. It would have felt wrong to have Loud above them after that. Technically, Loud have beat Sentinels in more maps than Sentinels have so far because Loud has won 4 against them in Kickoff and Sentinels won 3. But I think that would just be grasping at straws to try to keep Loud at number 1 when I just felt like Sentinels probably above them. Which means, of course, Sentinels are your number 1 team in Americas right now. Now, I didn't want to just go off of placement because that would have been boring, but I think for the top 2 teams, it absolutely is justified. Sentinels have looked incredible this entire tournament. They lose that first match against Loud, and it looked like, oh, maybe that collapse that could potentially be coming, that has definitely happened to this team in the previous 2 years. It looked like maybe that would have been the case again. But they rallied back, and then they looked insanely good. Them on Sunset and Split not only being as dominant on those two maps as they have been, but also playing both of those maps in nearly every match they've played. Admittedly, they have the advantage a lot of times, but overall, their map pool's really good, and having not one but two maps that you look like potentially the best in the world at, that is fantastic. They are in a great spot. They have a deep map pool. All of their players are firing on all cylinders. TenZ looks back. John QT might be the best IGL in the world right now. Second might be in the conversation for best player in the world right now. And Saucy has been looking fantastic, and so has Zellsis. Every single part of this team looks incredible right now, and I think that they're playing the best Valorant in the Americas right now, and potentially the entire world. We'll see how they do at Madrid. It's their first international tournament in quite some time. I think that they are an incredibly hardworking team. They even said, we are the hardest working team in the Americas in all of Valorant. And I think that's true. This team is looking ready to win. It's not about clout. We're not here to play games. We're here to win tournaments. And, you know, Sentinels, Sin City, it's back, and they're going to be dangerous this entire year. So I'm very, very excited to see what they do. Do I see them as international tournament contenders? I think they're contenders. I don't know if they end up winning one, but they look like they absolutely have it in their blood, and they look so ready for Madrid, and I'm very excited to see how they do there. It is going to be interesting how they do against other regions, because that is, I think, the main concern, but I think that they can overcome the odds. So these are my power rankings, 11 to number 1, where we aren't going to see any of these teams play except for Loud and Sentinels until April. So once that regular season split starts, I'll see how I update these power rankings. I think I'm going to be doing a power rankings for the teams just at Madrid, so look out for those. Let me know what you guys thought of my rankings in the comment section down below. Where would you have each of these teams? Am I wrong? Am I right? Let me know. Please click like if you enjoyed the video. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.